Hey YouTube, Tara Patricia here. Welcome to my channel. Today we're talking about judging ourselves, something we love to do. But we're going to talk about how you can use judgment as a teacher. And it's a really good one on going back to your authentic self. So stick around to the end because I'm going to give you 3 steps on how to really use judgment to reach your potential.
It's good to be alive right about now.
So like I've explained before, I'm here on social media because I have a real big passion on people loving themselves and kind of getting back to their authentic self. So naturally, if we're talking about loving ourselves, we're going to talk about our thoughts and our feelings, right? Well, I've done that before, definitely went into thoughts, and we kind of got onto a little bit last time on feelings. We worked with fear, and we'll do more with our feelings later. But there's a third element that I really want to get to today, and that's judgment. We all do it, we all know we've done it, but what is it really there for? You've heard the expression before, we are our hardest critics, and it's true, but what else does judgment do for us? Okay, so I'm sure you've heard me talk before about our mind and its job, and how it's not the job of the mind to move us forward, but it's the job of our minds to keep us in the same thought patterning. It's the job of the heart, or our core, or our center, whatever you want to call it, to kind of open ourselves to new things, right? If the mind thinks and the heart allows, that's a really important process. But there's something that we do to separate the two. We do it unconsciously, and that's judgment. Okay, so when we have a good thought, something we judge as good, what happens is our heart and our mind begin to connect a little. And so it feels good to us because unconsciously we know that our heart and our mind are meant to work together. But because we're still in a little bit of a judgment, even though it's a positive judgment, we still have the mind going, so we try to control it a little bit. So when we have a thought that we judge as good, we start to connect our heart and our mind together a little bit more. So we're opening to the concept of allowance. And that feels good to us, but because we're still kind of judging it, we're still in our mind space, which is our thought patterning, right? So we know that we're not completely, unconsciously, we know that we're not completely allowing for things. And so therefore we try to control it. Allowance is always stronger than our mind is. So when we start tapping into it slightly, because it's positive, so we feel good and we're starting to open, it makes us excited about it. But because we're still in that mindset, we're controlling it. And so therefore we never really open to complete allowance. And so we never really get to the point where we're flowing with life around us. But it feels good to us because we're being positive. But because we're not in complete allowance, or mostly in allowance, we never have a new experience of it. Because remember, again, the mind's job is to keep us in our thought patterns or the same thought dimension. So we never have a new experience. We can't if we're in the mind space. Now, when we judge a thought as bad, well, we really stay in the same thought place at that point in time. And so what we do is we completely, with that judgment call, we completely block off the connection of the heart and the mind. And because the only thing we've been taught so far is about the mind and what we can potentially do and get to with our minds, when we feel that disconnect because the judgment has blocked it off, we immediately go up to our headspace, up to our minds, and we start thinking, well, what can I do because I feel uncomfortable here? So I've judged this as not good, so there's something I must do. So we up to our head, which we will never leave the thought patterning or the dimension of that thought patterning if we stay up in the head. And then we do one of 2 things. Well, we can do both if you're really good at self-sabotage. But the first thing is we go right up to our heads, like I said, and we stay there. And we start thinking about what can I do differently? How can I approach this differently? What thoughts can I think? We might even decide, you know what, I don't want to do this any longer like this. So let's bring in all these positive affirmations and let's start thinking ourselves into a new way of being. Well, this doesn't match with our core because unconsciously we know that it's from allowance, from our core, where we're going to move to a new space. So since we've gone up to our head and we start thinking of all these new things that we can do, it messes with our core and it doesn't connect the two, and it leaves us feeling even worse. And then we start judging the fact that it's not working, and we start saying, what's wrong with me? I didn't do this correctly. I have to do better. I deserve so much more. I can't believe this is happening to me again. So we're now judging the judging that we're doing, and that really makes us not connected and feel really bad at our core, all unconsciously, because we're way up here. And the second thing we do is really kind of just an additive thing, kind of a bonus round if you're really good at self-sabotage, to the first step or the first thing that we can do. The second thing we do is we then disconnect completely from our feelings and we remain in our heads completely. In the first one, we're kind of in between the two, starting to judge, how we're judging because we feel that it's not right, even though we're up in our headspace. The second thing we can do is we can get so into our headspace, so uncomfortable, that the only thing we know to do, because we don't like to be uncomfortable, right? The only thing we know to do is completely disconnect from our feelings whatsoever. Do everything and anything we can so that we're not experiencing our feelings. So we begin to rationalize it. We become the best at making analysis, right? Do everything and anything we can to stay up there and stay away from here. And why neither one of these work for us is because at our core, unconsciously, we know already that we're using judgment as a way to separate the two. And we know that when we're trying to make the shift to our authentic self and live in our best potential authentically, that we have to go through allowance. So when we're judging, that's the immediate red flag warning sign to your internal self that says, I'm not in allowance. So therefore, I'm off balance. And when you're not in allowance, you will never, ever move to a new space. It doesn't matter how many affirmations you say. It doesn't matter how positive you are. You won't get there. By the way, I've jokingly called this before consciousology, the study of our conscious. And the mechanism that we use to remain unconscious is judgment. So bringing judgment back around and looking at it from another way, instead of keeping those separate, it actually works as a way to bring the two together in a balanced fashion, but really lets us go to our center, to our core, to our authentic self. Okay, so what do? Great, I get it. I understand now, Tara, that we have to bridge the two. I understand allowance works for me. Judgment is not the way to do it. So what are the steps? Well, they're pretty easy. There's 3 steps in total. The first one is to simply recognize or catch yourself when you're judging. So if you have a thought that has some judgment connected to it, first step is to stop and say, well, I just judged. Then the second step is so important. The second step is to not judge the fact that you were judging, because that gets us into such a circle that it's really hard to step out of. So the first step is to say, oh, I'm judging. The second step is to say, aren't I cute? I just judged. Oh well, silly me. No judgment whatsoever on it. So stop. Recognize that you've done it, and don't judge the fact that you're judging. Remember, judgment keeps us in the same thought patterns, the same thought dimension, but it only does that if we're judging unconsciously. If we are recognizing or bringing the judgment to consciousology, then we are able to have it become our teacher, and then that actually brings us in further. So the third step is to go to a place of neutrality. If we're not going to judge it, and it's still there, and we're going to use it, If we go, oh yay, it's there, I'm so happy I did it, well, that doesn't make sense, right? And so we're still judging it because good or bad, that's a judgment. But if we go to a place of neutrality, of being just completely neutral with the fact that we've judged, then like I said before, it then becomes a mechanism or a tool to connect us. Let's take an example to kind of bring it all home. Let's say you wake up, you get ready, and you look in the mirror and you go, I don't like what I look like today. You kind of feel a little, I don't know, on the ugly side or whatever. Well, there's your thought. And in and of itself, it's kind of a judgment, right? But we don't stop there. Once we kind of recognize that I'm being down on myself, then we say, oh, I shouldn't think like that about myself. That's horrible. I mean, I wouldn't say that to my best friend. Why would I say that to me? Okay, now we're judging the fact that we judged. So that, remember, is going to keep us in that vicious mind space. So what we do then is we go, oh, I need to change the way I think about myself. Boom, back up to our heads again. So you've said, I don't like the way I look. Ooh, that's bad, I shouldn't do that. Let's go back up into my head so that I can now come up with a new way to think about myself and to then, we say feel about myself, but really we're giving our thoughts to ourselves, right? So it's really to think about ourselves. And it's just a vicious circle in the same dimension of thought. But if we go to a place of neutrality within all of that, then we're taking the power of the judgment out and we're going back and we're giving value to the fact that we are okay in the experience that we're having right now and we're not judging it, which then, bing, allows us to open. So what does that look like in our example? First we say, oh, I don't like the way I look right now. There's our thought. We catch ourselves and we say, oh, look at me. Aren't I cute? I just judged. Well, I'm going to go to a place of neutrality now. So you go to a place of neutrality, and what that looks like is you say, you know what? I very well might be a hot mess today, but that's okay. And then you just leave it right there. You don't go any further with it. You don't say, but I know one day I won't be that way, or it won't last for long, or whatever. Because see, all these little things that we start doing, those are judgments again. So we simply say, I feel or I think like I look like a hot mess today. And that's just simply where I am. That's what I'm experiencing today. And you know what? That's okay. And then we just leave it there. We're neutral. This just opens us up and it allows for us to have a new experience because we haven't kept ourselves in one place or the other. We simply have acknowledged, this is how I feel, this is how I'm thinking right now, and it's okay. That's very peaceful. That's giving you permission to be right where you're at without judgment. That's amazing. So here's where it can get a little confusing. You can hold a knowing, like deep in your being, that you're not ugly, that you're whole, that you have the potential of being so much more. You can hold that knowing inside because it's your birthright. It's true. It's who you are. So it's good to have that inside of you. But it's just not having those thoughts being superimposed on top of it. So just, kind of including more judgment in it. So hold the knowing, but be neutral. Say, today, this is where I'm at, and that's okay. So on your journey to loving yourself and living your authentic life, make your judgments your teacher. So stop judging them and make them your partner, which connects you on your journey to your authentic life. Okay, y'all, that's it for today. You can visit me at my website, innerpathcoachingservices.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and make sure to like and subscribe. But more than anything, come back next Friday so we can talk some more. And that, my friends, is judgment.
It's good to be alive right about now.